The Science of the High, breaking down marijuana's effects on your brain, mind, and body. The conversation around cannabis, marijuana, weed, pot has changed dramatically. It is no longer a hidden topic, but a substance being openly discussed, legalized, and used for both medical and recreational reasons. But regardless of its legal status or popular appeal, the most important question remains: what is this plant doing inside your body and your brain? To understand the effects, both the immediate high and the potential long-term risks, we have to start with the fundamental science. Part 1, the first principle of the high, the endocannabinoid system. To explain how cannabis works, we can't start with the plant. We have to start with you. Your body has a system tailor-made to interact with cannabis, called the endocannabinoid system ECS1, the natural regulators, Anandamide and CB1 receptor simogen. Your body has a self-regulating control system dedicated to keeping everything in perfect balance: sleep, mood, appetite, memory, and pain. This is the job of the ECS, the key Anandamide. Your brain naturally produces its own cannabis-like chemicals, the most famous of which is Anandamide, often called the bliss molecule. This natural chemical acts like a temporary key, sending messages across your neural pathways, the lock CB1 receptors. The messages from Anandamide are received by tiny locks on your nerve cells called CB1 receptors. These locks are everywhere, especially concentrated in areas of the brain responsible for memory: hippocampus, coordination cerebellum, and higher thinking frontal cortex. The job: Anandamide keeps the communication between neurons regulated, ensuring no single message like dopamine, yummy food, overwhelms the system. It's a self-tuning instrument, always seeking equilibrium. 2. The intruder. Delta 9. Each main psychoactive chemical in cannabis is delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or the K is a molecular near-perfect match for your body's natural Anandamide, the hijack. When you use cannabis, the K enters your bloodstream and rushes to the brain, where it fits into those same CB1 receptor locks. The difference: quantity and duration. The problem is that the K is introduced in much greater amounts than your body ever produces naturally, and it lasts much longer. It effectively overwhelms the ECS, temporarily hijacking the body's self-regulating system. This massive prolonged activation is the reason for the psychoactive effects. The high. Part 2, the immediate effects on the brain and mind. The high is a direct result of the overwhelming the CB1 receptors located in specific parts of your brain. 1. Euphoria and the dopamine rushed mechanism. The K interferes with the regulation of two major neurotransmitters, GABA, the stop signal, and glutamate, the go signal. By inhibiting the stop signals GABA on the neurons that control the release of dopamine, the pleasure chemical, the K allows the go signal to run free. The effect, the result, is a flood of dopamine in the brain's reward center. This tricks your ancient survival system into creating a powerful feeling of well-being, euphoria, and pleasure. This rush is also the primary reason for the potential for addiction. See Part 4. 2. Impaired memory and coordination mechanism. High concentrations of CB1 receptors are found in the hippocampus, the memory center, and the cerebellum, the coordination center. The disruption in these areas blocks the signals necessary for short-term memory formation. The effect: this leads to difficulty forming new memories, problems with concentration, and a noticeable decrease in motor skills, reaction time, and the ability to judge distances. This is the scientific reason behind safety warnings against driving or operating machinery while intoxicated. 3. Altered senses and time perception. The mechanism. The K affects the basal ganglia and cortical regions that regulate sensory processing. The effect: many users experience altered senses. Colors seem brighter, sounds are louder, and time perception is distorted. Minutes can feel like hours. This temporary disruption of sensory filters is a classic feature of the acute high. 4. Psychological risks. The dark side of the high. While many seek relaxation, the K, especially at high concentrations, can trigger negative mental states, anxiety and panic. High doses can activate the amygdala, the brain's fear center, leading to confusion, intense anxiety, panic attacks, or paranoia, psychosis. In rare cases, high doses can cause temporary psychotic episodes characterized by hallucinations or delusions, where the user loses touch with reality. This risk is highest when using products with very high the potency. Part 3. long-term consequences and the vulnerable brain effects of cannabis are not limited to the period of intoxication. Research is still evolving, but studies from major medical institutions like Harvard Medical School and the CDC have consistently pointed to specific long-term risks, particularly when use begins before the brain is fully developed around age 25. 1. The developing brain ages 25 and under. The adolescent brain is highly sensitive to that because it is actively fine-tuning neural connections, especially in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for judgment, decision-making, and emotional control, IQ and cognition. Chronic heavy use beginning in adolescence has been linked to a significant loss of IQ points that are not fully recovered, even if the individual quits using cannabis later in life. Impaired connectivity. Neuroimaging studies show changes in white matter, the neural fibers that ensure efficient communication between brain regions in early onset users. This disruption can permanently affect how the brain builds connections for key functions like attention, memory, and problem-solving skills. Performance. Long-term cognitive impairment can manifest as worse educational outcomes, reduced attention, and poorer performance on complex tasks. 2. Mental health and psychiatric risk. While scientists are still trying to determine causality, there is a clear link between frequent cannabis use and increased mental health risks for certain individuals. Psychosis and schizophrenia. Frequent use, especially starting at a young age and involving high-potency products, significantly increases the risk of developing schizophrenia or other psychoses in individuals who are already genetically predisposed. Depression and anxiety. Heavy use is associated with a higher incidence of depression, anxiety disorders, and suicidal thoughts, though more research is needed to determine if cannabis causes these conditions or if people with these conditions are more likely to use cannabis. 3. Physical health concerns. Respiratory system. Smoking cannabis regularly can irritate the lungs, leading to symptoms like a chronic cough, increased phlegm, and a higher risk of chronic bronchitis. Cardiovascular system. The causes the heart rate to increase dramatically, often from 50-70 beats per minute up to 70-120 or more for several hours. This added strain can increase the risk of a heart attack or stroke, especially in older users or those with pre-existing heart conditions. Part 4. The paradox of addiction and tolerance. Contrary to past popular belief, cannabis is addictive, and its chemistry explains why. 1. Addiction and withdrawal. The vulnerability. Approximately 1 in 10 adults who use cannabis will become addicted, a number that jumps to about 1 in 6 for those who start using before the age of 18. Source: SAMHSA. Tolerance. The brain is a self-tuning instrument. When flooded with excessive the brain attempts to regain balance by temporarily closing off down-regulating its CB1 receptors. This explains why chronic users need increasingly higher doses to achieve the same high and may feel less reward from other pleasurable activities when sober. Withdrawal. When chronic users abruptly stop, they experience a legitimate cannabis withdrawal syndrome. Symptoms include irritability, mood swings, difficulty sleeping, restlessness, anxiety, and decreased appetite, making it difficult to quit. 2. The CBD factor. The other key player. Cannabis is complex, containing over 100 chemical compounds. The second most famous is cannabidiol CBD, which is non-psychoactive. The dampener. Evidence suggests that CBD may work to dampen some of the negative psychoactive effects of such as paranoia and anxiety. This is a primary focus of medical research, as seen in studies on medical cannabis patients at Harvard Medical School who report improved mood, energy, and sleep, possibly because the CBD counterbalances the negative side of C. In conclusion, understanding the effects of cannabis requires going beyond anecdotal experience to grasp the first principles of the endocannabinoid system. The acute high is the result of the perfectly mimicking your body's natural regulators, while the long-term risks are directly tied to the developing brain's attempt to cope with this powerful outside interference.